The gavel was exactly 3 inches from the wood. 3 inches from ending Catherine Sterling's life as she knew it. She had lost the house. She had lost her reputation. And in seconds, she was going to lose her daughter. The judge had taken a breath to deliver the final verdict, a ruling that would hand sole custody to a man everyone thought was a hero but Catherine knew was a monster. The courtroom was silent until a phone rang. Not a mobile in the gallery, but the secure line on the judge's bench. A call that wasn't supposed to exist. A call that would freeze the hearing lock, the doors, and turn the hunter into the prey. This is the story of how the perfect lie was destroyed by a single ring. The mahogany inside courtroom 4B of the Suffolk County Superior Court smelled of lemon polish and despair. For Catherine Sterling, it was the smell of her own funeral. She sat at the defense table, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that the knuckles had turned the color of old parchment. To her left sat Sarah Pinter, a public defender who was competent but exhausted, buried under a caseload that would crush a lesser woman. Sarah smelled like stale coffee and dry shampoo. Across the aisle, the atmosphere was entirely different. Richard Sterling sat there. He looked like he had just stepped out of a GQ spread on The Modern Philanthropist. His navy bespoke suit fit him like a second skin. His hair was salt and pepper perfection. He didn't look like a man going through a bitter divorce. He looked like a man attending a board meeting he had already rigged. Next to him was Leonard Graves, a divorce attorney whose hourly rate was higher than Catherine's annual rent. Catherine risked a glance at Richard. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Judge Anthony Halloway with an expression of respectful sorrow. It was the sad dad look. The look that said, "I tried to save her. Your Honor, but she's just too unstable." It was the look that had fooled everyone in Boston. To understand why Catherine was trembling in that chair, you have to understand who Richard Sterling was. Or rather, who Boston thought he was. Richard was the CEO of Sterling/Hale, a property development firm, credited with revitalizing the Seaport district. He sat on the board of the Children's Hospital. He donated anonymously, but somehow word always got out to domestic violence shelters. When Catherine met him 7 years ago, she was 24, a struggling art archivist with student loans and a chipped tooth she couldn't afford to fix. He was 38, charming and safe. He fixed the tooth. He paid the loans. He moved her into the townhouse on Beacon Hill. It started slowly. That's how the trap always works. It wasn't physical, not at first. It was the eroding of her reality. "Did you mail that check, Cat?" he would ask. "Yes, I dropped it in the box yesterday," she would answer. 2 days later, the check would be found in her purse. Richard would hold it up, smiling sadly. "Cat, honey, you have to start writing things down. You're losing track of time again." She would apologize, confused. She remembered the cold metal of the mailbox flap. She remembered the sound it made. But the check was in his hand. So she must be wrong. By the 3rd year after their daughter Sophie was born, the incidents escalated. Catherine would wake up to find the front door wide open. Richard would rush down, clutching Sophie, claiming Catherine had left it open after a late-night walk she didn't remember taking. He suggested therapy. He chose the therapist, Dr. Arris, a man who played golf with Richard on Sundays. Dr. Arris prescribed medication for postpartum psychosis and dissociative episodes. The pills made Catherine foggy. They made her sleep 16 hours a day. When she was awake, she was sluggish, slurring her words. Perfect for the narrative Richard was building. The climax came 6 months ago. The incident. Catherine had come home early from a rare lunch with her sister. She walked into the study to find Richard burning documents in the fireplace. Not just papers, photographs. Pictures of her. When she asked what he was doing, he turned. The look on his face wasn't the charming philanthropist. It was cold, dead aggression. He walked past her, picked up a heavy crystal vase, and smashed it against his own forehead. Blood gushed down his face. Catherine screamed. "Richard, what are you doing?" He smiled, blood coating his teeth. Then he handed her the vase. "Hold this," he whispered. She took it instinctively. Then he started screaming. "Catherine, stop. Please put it down. Sophie, run to your room. Mummy's having an episode." He hit the panic button on the alarm system. When the police arrived 3 minutes later, they found a frantic, bleeding Richard shielding their terrified 4-year-old daughter. Standing over them was Catherine, looking dazed, holding a bloody crystal vase. She was arrested for aggravated assault. Richard the Saint declined to press criminal charges, citing her mental state. He just wanted full custody to protect Sophie. And that led them here. To courtroom 4. B. Judge Halloway adjusted his glasses. He was a stern man known for efficiency. He didn't like drama. He liked facts. And Richard Sterling had provided mountains of facts. "Mr. Graves," the judge said, nodding to Richard's lawyer. "Your closing statement?" Leonard Graves stood up. He didn't button his jacket. He didn't need to be formal. He owned this room. He walked to the center of the floor, not looking at the judge, but looking at Catherine. "Your Honor," Graves began, his voice a low, smooth baritone, "we take no pleasure in these proceedings. My client, Mr. Sterling, still loves his wife. But love is not the metric by which this court must measure safety." Graves walked over to the exhibit table. He picked up a thick binder. "We have presented Exhibit A, Dr. Arris's medical notes documenting 3 years of declining mental stability. We have presented Exhibit B, the police report from the night of June 14th, where the defendant was found weapon in hand, standing over her bleeding husband." He paused for effect. "But more damning than that. Your Honor is the pattern. Mrs. Sterling is not a villain. She is a woman who is unwell. She has refused inpatient treatment. She has ceased taking her medication, claiming it poisons her. She is paranoid. She believes her husband, a pillar of this community, is gaslighting her." Graves chuckled softly, a sound that grated on Catherine's nerves like sandpaper. "Gaslighting. It's a trendy word, Your Honor. But in this court we look at evidence. And the evidence shows a mother who left her child in a bathtub with the water running to answer a phone call that never happened. A mother who forgot to pick her child up from preschool 3 times in 1 month. "I didn't," Catherine shouted. She couldn't help it. "He changed the schedule. He told me it was Tuesday when it was Wednesday." Judge Halloway slammed his gavel. "Mrs. Sterling, restrain yourself, or you will be removed." Sarah Pinter. Catherine's lawyer put a hand on her arm. "Cat, stop. You're helping them." Graves smiled. "See Your Honor outbursts. Inability to regulate emotion. If she does this in a court of law, imagine what she does when she is alone with a 4-year-old who refuses to eat her peas." Graves turned to Richard. "Mr. Sterling is prepared to pay for the best care facility for his wife. He is not asking for money. He is asking for sole physical and legal custody of Sophie Sterling with supervised visitation only when doctors deem Catherine fit." He sat down. It was Sarah Pinter's turn. Catherine looked at her lawyer. Sarah looked defeated. The problem was, they didn't have proof. Richard was careful. He used burner phones to change schedules. He deleted emails from her server. He had the doctor, the police report, and the money. Sarah stood up. Your Honor, my client is the victim of a sophisticated campaign of coercive control. The medical records provided by Dr. Aris are biased. Dr. Aris is a personal friend of the plaintiff. We have requested an independent evaluation, which was conducted. Judge Halloway interrupted by the court-appointed psychologist Dr. Evans. Yes, Sarah stammered, but Dr. Evans only met with Catherine for 40 minutes, and he admitted he reviewed Dr. Aris's notes prior to the meeting. Dr. Evans concurred with the diagnosis, the judge said flatly. Move on, Ms. Pinter. Catherine felt the cold knot in her stomach tighten. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as Richard had designed it to. Sarah tried her best. She talked about Catherine's bond with Sophie. She brought up the fact that Richard travelled 200 days a year. She brought up the nanny Maria, who had abruptly quit 2 days before the incident. Where is Maria Gonzalez? Sarah asked the room. She was the primary caregiver. She spent more time with Catherine and Richard than anyone. She could testify to the dynamic in that house. But she vanished. Mr. Sterling claims she returned to Guatemala. We have been unable to locate her. Richard sighed loudly from his table. She had a sick mother. He whispered loud enough for the mic to catch. Sarah faltered. She had nothing. No smoking gun. Just a terrified woman and a story that sounded crazy. Your Honor, Sarah concluded weakly. To remove a child from her mother, based on a single disputed incident and the testimony of a paid doctor, is a miscarriage of justice. We ask for 50-50 custody. She sat down. The courtroom went silent. The air conditioning hummed. Judge Halloway shuffled his papers. He took a sip of water. He looked at Richard, then at Catherine. His eyes were not unkind, but they were decided. I have reviewed the evidence, Judge Halloway began. This court's primary concern is the best interest of the child. While I do not doubt Mrs. Sterling loves her daughter, the volatility displayed in the police reports and the medical consensus cannot be ignored. Catherine stopped breathing. The world narrowed down to the judge's mouth. I find the environment in the mother's care to be potentially hazardous, Halloway continued. Therefore, I am prepared to grant the plaintiff's request. Richard leaned forward, a triumphant smirk hiding in the corners of his mouth. He had won. He had erased her. I hereby grant sole legal and physical custody of Sophie Sterling to Richard Sterling effective in... Brrring. The sound was sharp, loud, and jarring. It wasn't the digital trill of an iPhone. It was the heavy mechanical ring of a landline. Everyone froze. Judge Halloway looked down at his bench. The red phone. The phone that connected directly to the judge's chambers and emergency services. It never rang during a session. He frowned. He looked at the bailiff. The bailiff looked confused. Brrring. It rang again, echoing off the mahogany walls. Judge Halloway held up a hand, silencing the room, though no one was speaking. He picked up the receiver. This is Judge Halloway. I am in the middle of a ruling. Silence. The judge listened. Catherine watched his face. For the first 10 seconds he looked annoyed. Then his eyebrows drew together. His skin, usually a flushed, healthy pink, began to drain of color. He looked up. His eyes didn't go to Catherine. They went straight to Richard Sterling. Richard, sensing the shift, lost his smirk. He straightened his tie. I understand, Judge Halloway said into the phone. His voice was different now, tighter. Are you sure? Verified. And the timestamp. The judge listened for another 30 seconds. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Leonard Graves leaned over to whisper to Richard, but Richard waved him off. His eyes locked on the judge. "Do not let anyone leave the building," Judge Halloway said. He hung up the phone. He didn't bang the gavel. He placed both hands flat on the desk and leaned forward. "Bailiff," Halloway said. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "Lock the doors." "Your Honor." Graves stood up. "What is the meaning of this?" "We were in the middle of a verdict." "Sit down, Mr. Graves," Halloway snapped. It was a command, not a request. The judge looked at the court stenographer. "Go off the record." Then he looked at Richard Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, that was the district attorney's office, specifically the cybercrimes division." Richard laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Cybercrimes." "Your Honor, I hardly see what—" "They just received an automated upload," Halloway interrupted, "from a cloud server that hasn't been accessed in 6 months. It seems someone set up a dead man's switch on a digital account." Catherine's heart hammered. "Maria." "The account belongs to a Ms. Maria Gonzalez," the judge said. Richard's face went white, not pale white, like a sheet. "Ms. Gonzalez," the judge continued reading from a note he had scribbled, "is not in Guatemala. Mr. Sterling, according to the geotag on the file upload, she is currently listed as a Jane Doe in a comatose state at Mass General Hospital, where she was admitted the night she quit, suffering from severe head trauma consistent with a fall down a flight of stairs." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. "Silence!" Halloway roared. He turned back to Richard. "The file she uploaded contains audio recordings. Hundreds of hours of audio recordings from inside your home. Apparently, Ms. Gonzalez didn't trust you, Mr. Sterling. She wore a wire every day for 2 years." The judge picked up a remote control for the courtroom's AV system. "The DA just forwarded the relevant audio file to my clerk. We are going to listen to it. Right now." "Your Honor, I object," Graves shouted, panic finally setting in. "This is inadmissible." "We haven't authenticated—" "Sit down or I will hold you in contempt," Halloway yelled. "If this recording is what the DA says it is, admissibility is the least of your client's problems." The judge pressed play. Static crackled through the speakers. Then a voice, clear as day. Richard's voice. But it wasn't the voice he used in court. It was mocking. Cruel. "Stop crying, Cat. No one is going to believe you. I own the police chief. I own the doctor. You're just the crazy wife." A thud. The sound of something breaking. Then Maria's voice hushed, whispering into a microphone. "June 14th, 2:00 p.m. He's setting up the camera. He's cutting his own forehead with a razor blade. He's rehearsing the scream. Oh my God, he's going to frame her." The audio cut to Richard shouting, "Maria, get in here. If you tell anyone what you saw, remember, your mother in Guatemala is very easy to find." The recording clicked off. Judge Halloway looked at Richard Sterling. The look of respect was gone. In its place was pure, unadulterated disgust. "Bailiff," Halloway said softly, "take Mr. Sterling into custody." The silence that followed the judge's order was heavy, the kind of silence that precedes an explosion. "Take Mr. Sterling into custody." Judge Halloway repeated, his voice devoid of the earlier judicial patience. Richard Sterling stood up. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He adjusted his cufflinks. It was a reflex, a muscle memory of a man who believed that appearances could bend reality. He turned to Leonard Graves, his expensive lawyer. "Leonard," Richard said, his voice calm but tight. "Fix this. Tell him it's a deep fake. Tell him AI voice synthesis is inadmissible. Do your job." Leonard Graves looked at the bailiff approaching with handcuffs. He looked at the judge, whose face was a mask of fury. Then he looked at Richard. Graves slowly closed his briefcase. "I cannot suborn perjury, Mr. Sterling," Graves said, loud enough for the record. He took a step away from his client. "And given the nature of the evidence regarding witness intimidation and potential attempted murder, I am withdrawing as counsel effective immediately." Richard's eyes widened. For the first time, the mask slipped. The sad dad vanished, replaced by the predator Catherine had lived with for 7 years. "You coward," Richard spat. "I paid you a retainer of hands behind your back, sir," the bailiff said. He was a large man, and he didn't look impressed by Richard's suit. "Get your hands off me!" Richard shouted, jerking his arm away. "Do you know who I am?" "I am on the board of the Police Benevolent Association. I will have your badge." "Mr. Sterling," Judge Halloway said, leaning over the bench, "resisting arrest in my courtroom will add 5 years to your quota, before we even get to the kidnapping and assault charges. I suggest you comply." The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world to Catherine. She watched, frozen. She felt like she was floating above her own body. This was the man who had told her she was crazy. The man who had convinced her own sister that she was a danger to Sophie. The man who had made her doubt her own memories. Now he was being bent over the defense table, pat-down searched in front of a gallery of strangers. As they hauled him up, Richard locked eyes with Catherine. "This isn't over, Cat," he hissed. "You think you can survive without me? You're nothing. You're a broken doll. You'll come crawling back when the money runs out." "Get him out of here," Halloway barked. The doors opened, and 2 more officers arrived to escort Richard out. As the heavy doors swung shut behind him, the energy in the room shifted. It went from a battlefield to a vacuum. Judge Halloway took a deep breath. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he looked at Catherine, his expression was pained. "Mrs. Sterling," he said. Catherine tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. Sarah Pinter helped her up. "Yes, Your Honor," Catherine whispered. The judge paused. "In 20 years on the bench, I have rarely been so close to making a catastrophic error. The court owes you an apology, a significant one." He turned to the court clerk. "Vacate the previous order. Immediate temporary custody of Sophie Sterling is awarded to the mother, Catherine Sterling. Issue a full protective order against Richard Sterling, 100 yards. No contact, third-party communication, only through counsel. And release the funds from the joint accounts immediately. Mrs. Sterling is to have access to the marital home and all liquid assets to provide for the child." Sarah Pinter squeezed Catherine's hand. "We won, Cat. It's over." But Catherine didn't feel like she had won. She felt like she had survived a plane crash. She looked at the empty chair where Richard had sat. "Where is she?" Catherine asked. "Who?" Sarah asked. "Maria," Catherine said, her voice trembling. "The judge said, he said she was a Jane Doe. He said she was in a coma." Catherine looked at the judge. "Your Honor, where is Maria?" Judge Halloway looked at the file the clerk had handed him. "Mass General, ICU. She's been there for 6 months, Mrs. Sterling. Unidentified." Catherine grabbed her purse. "I have to go. I have to go see her." "Cat, wait," Sarah said. "We have to sign the papers. We have to go get Sophie from Child Services Holding." "Get the papers," Catherine said, a new steel entering her voice. "Meet me at the hospital. I'm not leaving Maria alone for 1 more second." 2 hours later, Catherine stood in the hallway of the intensive care unit at Mass General Hospital. The smell of antiseptic was stronger here than in the courtroom. It smelled like life and death fighting a silent war. Detective Thomas Miller stood next to her. He was a weary-looking man with a cheap suit and sharp eyes. He had been assigned to the Jane Doe case 6 months ago and had gotten nowhere until the phone call in the courtroom. "We didn't know who she was," Miller explained, his voice low. "She came in with no ID, no phone. Just severe head trauma. Found at the bottom of the service stairs at the Park Plaza subway station. We thought it was a mugging gone wrong or a homeless dispute. We ran prints, but she wasn't in the system." Catherine looked through the glass window. Maria Gonzalez lay in the bed, looking small and fragile. Tubes snaked in and out of her. Her face was pale, waxy. The Maria that Catherine remembered was vibrant, full of laughter, always singing Spanish lullabies to Sophie. This woman looked like a shell. "She saved me," Catherine whispered. "She was smart," Miller said with genuine admiration. "We had the tech guys look at the cloud server she used. It was a dead man's switch. You know what that is?" Catherine shook her head. "It's a program. She set it up to require a check-in from her every day. She had to log in and click a button that said, 'I'm safe.' If she went 180 days, 6 months without clicking that button, the system automatically executed a command." Miller flipped open his notebook. The command was to send that audio file to the district attorney, the FBI, and the private line of the judge presiding over your divorce. She must have known the court date, or she guessed. She timed the delay perfectly. Catherine pressed her hand against the glass. "Why didn't she just go to the police 6 months ago?" Miller sighed. "We found a draft folder in her cloud account. Notes she wrote to herself. She was terrified, Mrs. Sterling. Your husband, he threatened her family in Guatemala. He told her he had cartel connections. He told her if she went to the cops, her mother would be killed. She didn't trust us. She didn't trust anyone." The detective paused, looking at Richard's file in his hand. She was gathering evidence. She was waiting for enough proof to put him away for good so he couldn't hurt her family. But then he found out, Catherine finished. "We think so." Miller nodded. "The night she quit. We think he confronted her. Maybe he found the wire. He didn't just fire her. He tried to kill her. He pushed her down those stairs and took her purse to make it look like a robbery. He thought she was dead. He didn't know about the cloud backup." Catherine felt a wave of nausea. She had lived in the house with a murderer. She had slept in the bed next to him. "Is she going to wake up?" Catherine asked. "The doctors say the swelling has gone down," Miller said. "But 6 months is a long time. It's a waiting game." Catherine turned to the detective. "I want a guard on this door, 24/7. Mrs. Sterling, we don't usually— My ex-husband is rich." Catherine cut him off. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were hard. "He has connections. He tried to kill her once. If he makes bail, or if he has friends on the outside, he will try again. She is the only witness. She is the only reason he is in jail." Catherine reached into her bag. She pulled out the platinum credit card Richard had always monitored, the one she was terrified to use. "I will pay for private security if the department won't do it. But no one gets in this room without my permission. No one." Miller looked at her. He saw the transition happening. The victim was dying. The survivor was waking up. "Put your card away," Miller said gently. "I'll put 2 uniforms on the door. Richard Sterling isn't getting near her." Just then, Sarah Pinter came running down the hallway, holding a thick stack of paperwork. "Kat," she called out, "I have the release forms. Sophie is at the Child Services Centre downtown. The social worker is waiting for us." Catherine looked at Maria one last time. "I'll be back," she promised the unconscious woman. "I'm going to get our girl." The Department of Children and Families. DCF building was a stark contrast to the mahogany of the court and the sterility of the hospital. It was grey loud and smelled of industrial cleaner and stale anxiety. Catherine sat on a plastic chair, her leg bouncing nervously. "What if she doesn't want to come with me?" Catherine asked Sarah. "Richard told her I was sick. He told her I was dangerous. What if she's afraid of me?" "She's 4, Kat," Sarah said soothingly. "She wants her mum." The door opened. A social worker, a kind-looking woman named Mrs. Higgins, walked in. She was holding the hand of a small girl with curly brown hair and big tear-filled eyes. Sophie was clutching a dirty stuffed rabbit. She looked small. Too small. Catherine's heart stopped. She fell to her knees on the linoleum floor, opening her arms. "Sophie," she choked out. The little girl stopped. She looked at Catherine with hesitation. Richard's programming ran deep. "Mummy is sick. Mummy hurts people." "It's okay, Sophie," Mrs. Higgins said gently. "Mummy is here to take you home." Sophie took a step, then another. She looked into Catherine's eyes. "Mummy," Sophie whispered. "Are you fixed?" The question broke Catherine into a million pieces. "Oh, baby," Catherine cried, tears streaming down her face. "I was never broken. I missed you so much." Sophie dropped the rabbit and ran. She slammed into Catherine, wrapping her tiny arms around Catherine's neck. Catherine buried her face in her daughter's hair, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "I want to go home," Sophie sobbed. "Daddy yelled. Daddy was scary." "I know, baby, I know." Catherine rocked her. "Daddy isn't coming back. It's just us now. Just us." Sarah Pinter stood in the corner wiping her own eyes. Even the social worker looked moved. But as Catherine held her daughter, a cold realization settled over her. Richard was in a cell, yes. But for how long men like Richard Sterling didn't stay in cages? They had lawyers, they had favors, they had money hidden in places the IRS couldn't find. He had gaslit her for years. He had almost taken her child. He had tried to murder Maria. Catherine stood up, lifting Sophie onto her hip. The weight of her daughter grounded her. "Let's go home," Catherine said. But they didn't go to the townhouse on Beacon Hill. That house was a crime scene, a museum of her trauma. "Sarah," Catherine said as they walked to the car, "I need you to find us a hotel, somewhere secure, somewhere under a different name. I'm not going back to that house." "Smart," Sarah agreed. "I'll book you into the Omni. I'll use my firm's credit card so it doesn't trace back to you immediately." As they drove through the city, Catherine watched the streets roll by. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over Boston. Her phone buzzed. She jumped, terrified it was Richard, somehow. It was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling." It was Detective Miller. "Yes, Detective. Is Maria okay?" "Maria is the same," Miller said. "But we just executed a search warrant on your husband's office at Sterling/Hale. And we found something. Or rather, we found that something is missing." Miller's voice was grim. "Richard kept a safe in his office. We cracked it, It was empty except for one file folder. What was in the folder? Photos, Miller said. Surveillance photos. Of you, of Sophie, of your sister. But also blueprints. Blueprints of what his buildings? No. Miller said. Blueprints of the courthouse and the itinerary of the prison transport schedule. Catherine's blood ran cold. He planned this, she whispered. He knew there was a chance he'd get caught. It looks that way, Miller said. He had an exit strategy. Mrs. Sterling, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Richard was denied bail, but he is being transferred to the county jail tonight at 8 p.m. If he has the transport schedule, you think he's going to run, Catherine said. I think Richard Sterling has friends in very low places, Miller said. Stay inside. Keep your doors locked. We are putting extra security on the transport, but I just wanted you to know. Catherine hung up. She looked at Sophie, who had fallen asleep in the car seat, clutching her rabbit. Richard wasn't just a narcissist. He was a mastermind. And he wasn't done yet. 8:00 p.m. The sky was pitch black. Rain had started to fall, slicking the streets of Boston with a greasy sheen. Catherine sat in the hotel room. The television volume turned low. The news was already breaking it. Prominent CEO arrested in dramatic courtroom twist. Audio recordings reveal shocking abuse. She watched the footage of Richard being led out of the courthouse. He looked disheveled, but his head was high. He wasn't hiding his face. He looked expectant. On the screen, the reporter was standing outside the Suffolk County Jail. Richard Sterling is expected to arrive here any moment for processing, the reporter said, holding an umbrella against the wind. The district attorney has announced he will seek life without parole. Catherine's phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah. Don't watch the news. Try to sleep. Catherine ignored it. She couldn't sleep. She felt a vibration in her bones. On the television, the camera panned to the street. A line of police vehicles was approaching. Blue lights flashed against the wet pavement. Here comes the transport van now, the reporter said. Catherine leaned forward. The convoy slowed down to turn into the jail's sally port. There was a lead car, the armored van, and a trail car. Suddenly on the screen, a garbage truck pulled out from a side alley. It was moving too fast. Look out! Someone screamed on the TV. The garbage truck didn't brake. It slammed directly into the side of the armored van with a sickening crunch of metal. The van flipped onto its side, skidding across the pavement. Sparks flew. The reporter dropped the microphone. The camera shook wildly. Gunfire. Pop, pop, pop. Catherine covered her mouth to stifle a scream. Sophie shifted in the bed, but didn't wake. On the TV screen, chaos. Smoke. Figures in black tactical gear, not police gear, military gear, jumped out of the garbage truck. They weren't there to attack the police. They were there to suppress them. They blew the back doors of the van. A figure emerged from the wreckage. Richard. He was limping, bleeding from a cut on his head, but he was moving. One of the masked men handed him a jacket and a phone. Richard looked directly at the news camera, at the world, at Catherine. He smiled, a terrifying, blood-stained smile. Then he jumped into a black SUV that screeched onto the scene. The SUV sped away, disappearing into the rainy Boston night. The news anchor back in the studio was shouting. We have just witnessed... Oh my God. Richard Sterling has escaped. I repeat, Richard Sterling has escaped custody. Catherine dropped the remote. He was out. He was loose, and he knew exactly where she was. Not the hotel, but he would find it. He always found it. Catherine ran to the window. The city lights below looked like eyes watching her. She grabbed her phone and dialed Detective Miller. "I saw it," Miller said, picking up on the first ring. He sounded out of breath. "Mrs. Sterling, you need to leave. Now." "Where do I go?" Catherine cried. "He has blueprints. He has money. He has an army." "He has a head start," Miller corrected. "But he made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He didn't kill Maria," Miller said. "And 10 minutes ago, she woke up." "She's awake," Detective Miller repeated, his voice cutting through the panic in the hotel room. "And she's talking. Mrs. Sterling, Richard isn't just running from the assault charges. He's running from his investors." Catherine held the phone tight. "What investors?" "The people who funded his developments. The cartel. Maria says Richard was laundering money through Sterling/Hale. That's why he needed sole custody. He used Sophie's trust fund as the clean account to move the money. Without Sophie, he loses access to the offshore accounts. Without the accounts, he can't pay them back." Catherine looked at Sophie sleeping peacefully with her dirty stuffed rabbit. Richard didn't love Sophie. To him, she was a frantic living password to a bank vault. "He's coming for her," Catherine said, her voice turning cold. "He doesn't care about me. He needs her." "We have a secure extraction team 2 minutes out," Miller said. "We're going to move you to a federal safe house in Maine." "No," Catherine said. "Excuse me." "Richard knows the protocols. He has the blueprints, remember. He knows where the safe houses are. He'll ambush the transport, just like he did the prison van." Catherine's mind was racing, clarity washing over her like ice water. "He's a narcissist, detective. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm the scared little woman who forgets to mail checks." "Catherine, don't do anything stupid," Miller warned. "Maria," Catherine asked, "did she tell you where the ledger is, the access key for the accounts?" "She said it's on a micro SD card," Miller said. "She said Richard hid it somewhere. Nobody would look. She doesn't know where." Catherine looked at the bed, at the stuffed rabbit, the one Sophie refused to let go of, the one Richard had bought her right before the divorce started. "Here, sweetie, keep Mr. Bun-Bun safe for Daddy." Catherine walked over and gently picked up the rabbit. She felt the seam on the back. It was slightly harder than the rest of the stuffing. "I know where it is," Catherine whispered. "Mrs. Sterling. I'm going to end this, detective. Meet me at the townhouse on Beacon Hill. But don't come in until I text you. Catherine." "No." She hung up. She turned to Sarah Pinter, who was pacing the room. "Sarah," Catherine said, "take Sophie. Take her to the police precinct yourself. Not a safe house. The precinct. Sit in the chief's office and don't leave." "Cat, what are you doing?" Sarah asked, terrified. Catherine ripped the seam of the rabbit open. She dug her fingers into the stuffing and pulled out a tiny black memory card. She put the card in her pocket. Then she sewed the rabbit back up with a needle and thread from the hotel sewing kit. "I'm going to draw the wolf away from the lamb," Catherine said. The Beacon Hill townhouse was dark. The electricity had been cut during the investigation. Catherine entered through the back kitchen door. The house smelled of stale air and Richard's cologne, a lingering ghost of his presence. She moved through the rooms. She knew every creak of the floorboards. She had spent 7 years memorizing the geography of her own prison. She went to the study, the place where he had cut his own head, the place where he had destroyed her life. She sat in his leather chair. She placed the stuffed rabbit, now empty of the drive, on the desk, directly under the moonlight streaming through the window. She pulled out her phone. She turned on the location tracking, and she waited. It took 20 minutes. She heard the front door lock click. Richard still had his key. Of course he did. She didn't move. She listened to the heavy footsteps in the hallway. They weren't the footsteps of a man sneaking in. They were the footsteps of a man who owned the place. The door to the study swung open. Richard Sterling stood there. He looked like a nightmare. His expensive suit was torn and muddy. His forehead was bandaged. He held a suppressed pistol in his right hand. He saw her. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, Kat," he said. "I knew you'd come back here. You always were a creature of habit." "I sent Sophie away, Richard," Catherine said, her voice steady. She didn't stand up. "I don't need Sophie," Richard said, stepping into the room. "I need the rabbit. Maria talked, didn't she? That rat." He aimed the gun at her chest. "Give me the rabbit, Catherine, and maybe I'll let you live. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." Catherine picked up the rabbit from the desk. She held it in her lap. "You never loved us," she said. "It was always just business." "Love is a liability," Richard sneered. "I built an empire. I provided you with a life most women would kill for, and you whined. You were weak." "I wasn't weak," Catherine said softly. "I was trusting. There's a difference." "The rabbit, Cat. Throw it here." Catherine stood up. She held the rabbit out. "You want it? Come get it." Richard laughed. "Still playing games? Fine." He holstered the gun arrogance, his fatal flaw, and walked toward her. He was twice her size. He reached out to snatch the toy. "You're pathetic," he hissed, grabbing the rabbit. "And you," Catherine said, her voice dropping an octave, "are under arrest." Richard froze. "What?" Catherine pressed the button on the desk, the panic button Richard had installed to frame her. The one that silently alerted the private security firm he used to own. But Richard didn't know that Catherine had met with the security firm owner 3 months ago during the divorce discovery. She knew the system better than he did. "I didn't call the police, Richard," she said. "I called the FBI." The windows of the study shattered inward. Red laser sights dotted Richard's chest like measles. "Drop the weapon! Get on the ground!" Voices roared from the hallway, the windows, the ceiling vents. Richard stumbled back, clutching the rabbit. He looked at Catherine with wild, betrayed eyes. "You set me up!" he screamed. He reached for his gun. Bang! A single shot rang out. Not from the FBI, from Catherine. She held the small revolver she had taken from the safe in the hotel room, Sarah's personal protection piece. She had aimed at his shoulder. Richard spun around, dropping the gun and the rabbit. He fell to his knees, gripping his bleeding shoulder. A swarm of agents tackled him. They slammed his face into the Persian rug. Detective Miller burst into the room, stepping over the glass. He looked at Catherine. She was still standing, the gun lowered her chest, heaving. "I told you not to come in until I texted," she said, her voice trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. "I got impatient." Miller grinned. An FBI agent picked up the rabbit. He ripped it open. He felt around. "It's empty," the agent said. "There's no drive." Richard, pinned to the floor, blood pouring from his shoulder, looked up. "What? No, it has to be there." Catherine walked over to him. She knelt down so she was eye level with the man who had been her god, her husband, and her tormentor. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the tiny black SD card. "Looking for this?" she asked. Richard's eyes bulged. "Give it to me, you stupid—" Catherine smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was free. "No, Richard," she said. "I think I'll mail this one. I'll make sure I drop it in the box myself. I'm getting very good at remembering things." She handed the card to Detective Miller. "Get him out of my house," she said. The park was bright and green. The Boston Public Garden was in full bloom. Catherine sat on a bench, sketching in a notepad. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, lighter. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, not the stiff designer dresses Richard used to pick out. "Mummy, look." Sophie ran up to her, holding a giant pretzel. She was 5 now. She was loud, happy, and messy. She didn't ask if she was being good anymore. She just was. "That looks delicious," Catherine laughed, wiping mustard off Sophie's chin. "Can we go see Auntie Maria?" Sophie asked. "Of course," Catherine said. "She's waiting for us at the cafe." Maria Gonzalez was sitting at a table nearby. She used a cane. Now the fall had left her with a permanent limp, but her smile was the same. She waved as they approached. They had testified. It had taken months. The trial was the biggest scandal in Boston history. The audio tapes, the cartel connections, the attempted murder. Richard Sterling was currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences at ADX, Florence the Supermax prison in Colorado. He spent 23 hours a day in a concrete box. He had no audience. He had no control. He was forgotten. Catherine sat down opposite Maria. "You look good, Cat," Maria said. "I feel awake," Catherine replied. She looked at her daughter chasing a butterfly on the grass. She thought about the woman she used to be, the woman trembling in the courtroom 3 inches away from losing everything. She picked up her iced tea. "To the ring," Maria said, raising her glass. "To the ring," Catherine agreed, because sometimes the difference between a tragedy and a victory isn't a superhero. It isn't a lawyer. Sometimes it's just a phone call that comes at exactly the right time. Richard Sterling built a fortress of lies thinking he was untouchable. He thought he could erase his wife's reality and steal her child. But he forgot the one variable: he couldn't control the loyalty of a good person and the courage of a mother pushed to the edge. Catherine Sterling didn't just survive, she rewrote the verdict. If this story had you holding your breath, please hit that like button. It helps us tell more stories like this. And if you want to see more real-life dramas about justice served cold, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. What would you have done if you were in Catherine's shoes? Would you have faced him in the house or run? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back. And